shelter in place in the den of snakes. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. We have a very special show today. This is a special occasion. Everyone is, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are stuck at home with their family members. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We are all crammed into the tangent cube here with the whole snake family. So I've always wanted to have a reason to say this on the show. So here we go. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Russ.
And of course, we have returning to the show the Snake Dad, Snake Stache.
Hey, Russ and Kyle, glad to be here.
We're glad to have you guys. So we're just going to hang out and talk about all kinds of stuff. And people have been asking for the Stache to come back on the show. And so that's what we're doing. And people have also asked to have Mom on the show to talk about some stuff. So we're gonna go through some of that. But first, let's go ahead and do space weather news from spaceweather.com. Solar wind incoming. A minor stream of solar wind is expected to hit Earth's magnetic field on March 29th, possibly sparking auroras around the Arctic Circle. The gaseous material is flowing from a southern hole in the sun's atmosphere. Also, welcome back, Steve. It is springtime, and Steve is back. Jocelyn photographed the purple ribbon over Fremont, Quebec on March 22nd. Steve was right behind Venus, she says. Steve, which is strong thermal emission velocity enhancement, looks like an aurora, but it is not. The phenomenon is caused by hot 3,000 degrees Celsius ribbons of gas flowing through Earth's magnetosphere at speeds exceeding 13,000 miles per hour. Glowing with a soft purple hue, these ribbons sometimes appear when Earth's magnetic field is unsettled by the solar wind. Studies show that Steves tend to occur more frequently during spring and fall than summer and winter. The onset of northern spring seems to lure the arc out of winter hiding. That means now is the time to look for Steve. Steve's usual habitat lies between latitudes 50 north and 55 north. Blanchette's hometown is located squarely in that range at 53 north. Recently, however, skywatchers have been seeing Steve farther north, as high as 63 north. Is Steve's range increasing? Photos and reports are welcomed at spaceweather.com. Current conditions. Solar wind speed is 375.5 kilometers per second, and the density is a very low 2.2 protons per cubic centimeter. Interesting.
Not sure what that means yet.
Yeah.
Still.
But the return of Steve.
Yeah. I remember Steve.
Yeah. Where Snake Force listeners are familiar with the Steves. I mean, not many people can say that. Yeah, I know what a Steve is. It's a it's an auroral phenomenon, but not, right? All right. So do you have stories?
No.
Okay. Sounds good. Well,
because we got a lot of listener communications and
right. Yes. So let's go ahead.
I still have two boring stories that I'm not wanting to do.
Okay. We'll save those for a really boring show.
Well, I have a question from my favorite redneck in East Texas. What about that guy that watches stuff from deep space? Where he be at?
The Watcher. He has not joined the call yet, but he will be here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's very busy.
Yeah.
In his tin can.
Yeah.
And bag of chips.
He still has not managed to climb out of the can of Pringles. Okay, so first I want to go through a couple of reviews here. So I can't remember because the last time I read reviews was many shows ago, and I'm not prepared. So I'm just going to go through the recent reviews on here because I don't remember the last one I read. But this one says, great podcast. Excellent find. These guys are too funny, keeping it light and playful while diving into some huge stuff. 10 out of 10 from Ant Sands, Canada. Yeah.
Thank you.
10 out of 10. 5 stars.
Right on. Thanks, Betty.
Yeah. This one's called Pretty Neat. This podcast has been blowing my mind lately. Concepts that I thought were ridiculous, I now have a more open mind. As a recent scriptard, I have now learned that we can't explain life with confidence. I have more interest in the night sky and the ancient peoples of this planet. Keep learning, boys. from Jag Sauce.
Oh, man, that's great.
Yeah, that's a great one.
That's really good.
Converting the scriptard.
Yeah, as a recent scriptard.
But it's always better when you get, like, every person that goes through that process is just one more mind now focused on all these mysteries. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Love it.
Do love it. This one's called 9 stars. 9 out of 5 stars. They cover so many great topics in all the detail you could ask for, from Rage Away Crab Man from the United States. Thank you, Rage Away. Hands down best podcast. These guys kill it. They research the topic unlike any other podcast in this genre. You will definitely laugh if you're not soulless or without a sense of humor or are PC babies or are part of the newfound... Well, okay. I probably shouldn't read all that stuff.
Thanks, buddy.
Really appreciate it. Snake and Amazing. He says, whoops, back up here. Snake and Amazing, hands down. He says, I'm a mechanical engineer who worked in photography and semiconductor manufacturing. A dried drop of sweat on a precision block floating a heavy precision machine on an air bearing will cause said machine to be out of service until that malfunction can be determined.
Wow.
So he liked the precision shows.
Holy
Yeah.
cow. That's
And his
serious.
username is ASDHGFSDSS. So he just was like on the keyboard to make his username.
Nice.
Very precise.
What was it again? A dried?
Yeah, a dried drop of sweat on a precision block that is floating a heavy precision machine on an air bearing will cause said machine to be out of service until that malfunction can be determined.
Wow. Salt crystals, probably, huh?
Yeah. It makes the air bearing not work properly.
Wow.
That's really cool. All right. Got a couple of emails real quick. This one is also called Snake and Amazing. I wonder if it's the same guy. From Trevor. He says, Bros de Serpientes. You guys are Snake and Amazing. I found your podcast after hundreds of hours of the soon-to-be legendary Randall Carlson. I grew up in Oregon and spent many camping trips at the Three Rivers Canyon at the headwaters of a river near Madras. This high desert plateau has massive canyons of extremely steep gravel walls. Many of these canyons never have water in them. The younger driest boundary under glacial floods is evident there. It blew my snaking mind. 10 years ago, I broke my shackles from the capitalist society and moved to a twin volcano island in the tropics. It is a place that time forgot, but that is a whole snake and rabbit hole I'll save for later. Anyway, my certificate of ignorance allowed me to be one of a very few Johnsons to work on cutting-edge photolithography machines. The precision Dunn is talking about is the level required to make computer processors. Just saying, the table that holds a wafer weighs several hundred pounds and floats on an air bearing over a precision block. This is the same guy.
Yeah.
It moves with the lightest touch when the air is on and locks like a Johnson block when the air is turned off.
Wow. Okay.
This table moves several feet per second, driven by electric magnets or lead screws. If the Egyptians had the means to compress air, then maybe these blocks were levitated on air bearings. I could go on forever, but now this snake and email is too long. Have you ever heard of Nassim Haramein? It would be amazing if you could get him to talk on your show. And yeah, we have, and we are going to eventually get him on the show. He has a lot of interesting ideas. But man, thanks for this stuff on the precision there.
That's really cool.
That's really
so yeah,
cool.
if it's barely, there's like the tiny little air pillow or whatever it is,
Yeah.
bearing
Yeah.
between these two surfaces, like some dried sweat,
Yep.
salt crystals will get in the way. Was that a lead screw?
Maybe a lead screw. Lead. It was spelled as Lead.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you make screws out of lead?
I wouldn't.
Seems like it would be really soft.
Yeah. Might get screwed up.
Okay. This is from Christine. It says, hey, Snake Bros. I've wanted to send you these links since back while listening to an episode on John Anthony West's book when you mentioned that Zahi Hawass studied Egyptology in Pennsylvania. I thought that couldn't be true. Wouldn't Egypt be a more appropriate place to study Egyptology? At least if you're already there. So I Googled it. OMG. Not only were you correct, but I came across these following gems, and she gave some links. Egyptian Antiquities official defends fashion line, and Zahi Hawass now. Okay, so there's web links. I didn't read the story, sorry. And the most egocentrical of all. Okay, if y'all have already seen this, please disregard this email. I've never heard it mentioned on your podcast, but I haven't been able to listen to all the episodes yet. My wish is that neither of you have seen it and that I could be a fly on the wall when you did. Well, I failed you. I haven't looked at these links yet. Sorry. And as for your
during the break,
yeah, we can check it out during the break. And as for your added viewing pleasure, the following article that provides a transcript of what was said during an argument I'm sure you know of. Just seeing the transcript makes it so much funnier. Okay, so it's the transcript of the fight.
Graham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also sending some things below that I found during Google Images search, and it's like Zahi doesn't believe in radar, and Indiana Jones faces charges, sentenced to 1 year in jail. Yeah. Zahi Hawass, resign. You are wrong. So, great memes there. And yeah, we'll check these links out at the during the break. But yes, we were right. He went to school in Pennsylvania. Okay. This is an interesting one. This was posted on the website. It's a comment on episode 139, which was live from quarantine, which was our talk about everything. So he says, I had a thought just now. Okay, so you know how we have clay pots and stuff now for gardening. Say you accidentally break one of those pots, but are too lazy to clean up the small pieces, so you just leave them in the dirt. So say some 10,000 years later, some Johnson discovers some pieces of a clay pot in his garden. But none of the other gardening tools or evidence of someone living in a house with a TV and a Keurig machine for their coffee exists. Johnson will make the logical assumption that this site was once occupied by hunter-gatherers and this was a food pot or something else that broke. I hope this is all making sense.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
But if this train of thought could apply to old Lady Springfield in her garden dropping a clay flower pot, would it be safe to assume that some clay shards or stuff we have found could be from something similar, where it's not from people in butt flaps making food pots, but just an old lady dropping a decorative pot? I already can say that we will never know this answer, but it does raise some interesting thoughts. Hopefully my little shower thought made sense. Anyway, I'm still loving the show, and no, I have not found anything more about that red mercury or that ancient site, although I'll admit I have not searched very hard. Snakes! Okay, he was the one that talked to us about the red mercury. Remember that? He was like, there's a special kind of mercury that's red.
Yeah, really vaguely.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, we haven't looked very hard either, obviously.
Yeah. Forgot all about it.
But yeah, I do like the idea that, 10,000 years from now, you might find little pieces of the pot that was dropped, but no evidence of the house.
Yeah, presumably the fired clay is going to last a lot longer than the wood from your house or
concrete breaks
the
down
bitumen
into
and stone
Yeah.
from the shingles. It's just sand.
Yeah.
And
Did we start the timer? Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my vinyl siding, I'm not sure. But it'll break down in the sun, though.
Yeah.
It'll totally just shatter to nothing.
Yeah.
But if it gets buried, I'm not sure how long that would last. Like the plastics that are buried
Last a long
could
time.
last a really long time. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah. I was thinking about, we have these huge, landfills.
Yeah.
Someday those are going to be like treasures,
I know.
and
weird.
people who dig in them are going to be called looters. Think about that.
Yeah, that's right. It's true. Yep.
Yep. All right. Now, let's go to the main guests here.
I mean, I've heard,
That's fine.
I just can't remember where I heard this or read it, but it's, it's sort of the scare tactic. The plastics are going to be in the ground for millions and millions of years.
Yeah.
Like, they think we're
Watchers here.
destroying the planet but I don't know. How do we know they're going to be there for millions of years? Like,
Yeah.
Out here where we live, you leave plastic outside and it's done.
Right.
Like, it does not take long.
Yeah.
All my gas cans, I just threw away a whole bunch of gas cans. Completely just deteriorating. I've had all kinds of bar oil jugs or something that I had sitting out there, and then I go to grab it one day and the handle just comes right up. They just shatter to...
Yeah. The sun is damaging it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I've heard also they've done studies where they find all this plastic dust or these tiny, tiny microscopic plastic fibers
Yeah. Yeah.
that are in they're just everywhere,
Right. They're
flying around in the air, and so that's
they're
now
appearing in layers of ice, and
That's right.
yeah.
So it's like all these plastics are being broken down on the surface to these tiny microscopic fibers that then get airborne.
Yeah.
So we're breathing them in, and then just like nobody has any idea what kind of lasting effects this is going to have. But
Right.
the idea that if you bury it in the ground, that it's going to be there for millions of years, and that's a huge problem, is kind of,
Yeah.
I don't see that as being.
It'll just turn back into oil, and people will be pumping it out of the ground again a long time.
Yeah. There's some great oil under them landfills.
Yeah. How'd that happen?
Plastic fracking has come of age.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So we did ask the snake pit, the troll room, for questions, but let's get into those at the in the next segment.
Okay.
Yeah. So first, one of the things that people have wanted to talk about or to hear about is, like, they've asked us how we learned how to learn stuff. So we've been wanting to get Mom on the show because, well, both of them really, because you guys know more about our early education. So let's talk about that. Like, what do you think? What was your strategy, or did you have a strategy?
Yeah, but we didn't know it was a strategy at the time.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
figured it out in 2020 hindsight. But I'll say that when we took you out of school, Russ went to K4, K5, first and second grade in private school. And he was, oh my gosh, so bored. It was just awful. Which meant, of course, you know what happens when boys get bored. So I was
they get into
on
trouble.
first name basis with all of his teachers. And and the thing that would happen is every school break, Christmas, the summers, he would just be so calm and do great. And then we'd start back in school and the problem would start again. So finally, Dave and I, we were constantly discussing, should we take him out? We both really wanted to take him out in homeschooling, but at that time there was no research, and we were being told by educators that would be the biggest mistake we could ever make, to take him out. So I listened.
It was true.
I listened to that until the first studies came out on homeschooling, and they were so positive. And the whole thing about one of the big scares back then was, they'll just be socially so inept. They won't be
Also
able
true.
to.
Hey.
So the studies came out and said, oh my gosh, these kids are so far ahead socially. And I wasn't worried about the academics actually at the time. I was worried that, since he was having, quote, social problems in school, which weren't really they weren't socializing problems. They were just that he was bored and didn't know what to do with himself during the classroom hours. He got along fine when there wasn't classroom
And it
hours.
would annoy people, right? Yeah.
It would annoy your teachers.
Yeah. I'm still really good at that. Annoying
Anyway, so these studies came out, and Dave and I were just like, yes! And we just snatched him right out of school. And so then, you all of a sudden, here you are, and Kyle wasn't in school yet. He's 3.5 years younger than Russ. So he would have been going into K4 at that time. And so, we make this big decision, and we get him home, and we're going to all these curriculum fairs, and we're picking all the books and doing all this. And we didn't know anybody was homeschooling. We were like the first ones that we knew. So here was the trick. The thing that we really realized was that when you take your child out of school, or when you decide you're going to homeschool your children, you realize that suddenly the full responsibility of their education now falls upon you.
Yeah.
You can't put any of this on anyone else.
Right.
So we just basically took the philosophy of life is school. There was no time that we weren't in school because, you really learn from everything in life. And so we didn't have, I mean, of course we had school hours. You know, we had the times when we were doing the books and the academics.
Yeah.
But the whole point was we completely changed the way we looked at everything we did. You know, from teaching them how to cook to walks in the woods to anything. It was all like, what can we learn from this? You know?
Yeah.
And so I think when you're raised with the attitude of life is school, then you're like automatically want to learn about everything. So you don't look at learning like this. It's not in a box anymore.
Right.
You know, it takes the learning, the education out of that little box. This is something you do when you go to school. And the rest of the time, we don't have to learn, you know? It's just like everything is learning. And it makes learning fun. And the longer that we homeschooled, the greater the curiosity was about things. You know, they just started asking questions and thinking about things and wondering about things. And then you go through the process of, well, how do we find out?
Yeah.
You know, I certainly didn't know everything. and then I even got to the point where even if I did know the answer, the most important thing was to teach you how to find the answer, as opposed to coming to me like I was the encyclopedia.
Right.
So that's...
You would usually send me to the actual encyclopedia.
Yes. Russ is the only person I know that's read the entire encyclopedia from one end to the other. He got to the point...
Yeah.
Yes.
Those
he would
encyclopedias
literally-
were fascinating.
He would literally sit in our upstairs den, which was kind of like a school area, and you'd go in there and you'd find me sitting there reading the encyclopedia. It was like, or he'd run downstairs like, Mom, look at this.
Yeah.
You know, and he was
In
so
S,
excited.
yeah. I'm in F. Look at this. Weird fly.
It was actually World Book. We didn't.
That's right.
We didn't buy Britannica.
Yeah.
We bought.
Oh, it was the World Book set.
They
Okay.
sold
But it was
us.
still an encyclopedia.
Yeah, they
right?
came right in the house. They showed us all this stuff, and man, they got our money. I'll tell you, it was a good sales job.
Oh, we got
used
every
to get
penny
an
out of it.
annual thing from them.
That's
too,
right. They'd
and
send another book.
Yeah.
Every
It had all
year.
these tabs in it that you could
Updates.
put in the old books.
Right,
Yeah.
updated, and they
Yeah.
sent an annual science book. That was the awesome. That's
Yeah.
what really kind of sold us on it.
Yeah.
Every year they sent us 2 books. One was just to update anything that they had in general, and the other was an update on science. So
And we also had subscriptions to lots of tech magazines. What were they? I mean, I remember getting them, the monthly subscriptions to, I can't remember what they were called now, but the popular mechanics, popular science.
yeah,
yeah.
Popular
I was like, it is
science.
popular something. Yeah. Popular mechanics and popular
Popular
science
science.
were fascinating. And of course we had,
Popular scriptards.
man, we should make that one. And then,
That might have been a mistake subscription there because they built things we had no idea what they were doing. You know,
I'm like,
Russ would go, "Hey, Kyle, look at this!
this thing in
Look what I
popular
just
mechanics."
found." Man, we go in Dad's shop, and I think he's got all this stuff. Or we'll call Chris. He probably has them. If Dad doesn't have them, and they
Yeah.
go make something.
or we have to go to the hardware store. Mom, we have to go to the hardware store. We need this, and this.
Yeah.
What for?
For what? Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I'm building something.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Kyle used to build traps in his room.
Yep.
I mean, he would booby trap his
I went
freaking
through
room.
a trap phase. I did.
You guys wonder why I'm like kind of paranoid conspiracy? Because my brother used to booby trap the house.
What were those things called? Snapping pops, where they
Yeah.
had a string on
Oh,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
He had them tied everywhere.
Yeah, you go in and open the pantry door and go. Oops, was that probably too loud?
No, that's good.
Yeah, I got like 4
And then there would be
boxes
laughter,
of those in
laughter,
the drawer
laughter.
back there right now.
You got more of them?
Yeah,
right
Ty brought a bunch of them.
Oh, no.
A ton of 'em. And I'm afraid he's gonna get me because he'll bring them over and give them to me, right? And then I forget that I have them. And then one night when he's in here, he rigs the whole studio with it, with everything I open, for months.
Oh, it's coming back to haunt you, Kyle.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I taught him something bad.
Well, I think I heard you mention Cape San Blas in the last podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was going to say something about that in our education.
I will say,
yeah.
that
man.
was that was
The
amazing.
peninsula runs out of the panhandle of Florida down into the Gulf of Mexico, and the actual Cape runs north and south. So this hook comes down in the Gulf, and then the Cape runs like this, and that point, the Cape that we went to, was down on the southern
That's
end.
right.
And the state park was
on the north- the
7
northern
mile
side.
northern side.
Yeah, okay.
Going back toward the mainland. But there was a bay there called St. Joe's Bay, and it was knee deep to ankle deep for acres, right?
Yes.
Oh, man.
It's
I mean, yeah,
all
you-
about, you could walk out just hundreds
Yeah.
of yards
Yeah.
in it. Yes.
Crystal clear water, calm, and we watched snail tracks on the bottom of that sand, on that sand at the bottom. And you couldn't see the snail, but you could see the tracks. And so we would dig them up with a little scoop to see what kind of snail was making that track.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were little bitty horseshoe crabs and
Yep.
The olive.
tent olives.
Yep.
Just everything.
Yeah,
How
so that
many-
was another thing. Y'all got Dad was real big on field guides. Like you had all these field guides.
Yes.
Yeah. Birds and
So of
bugs
course, when
and-
we started going to this place in Florida, they got the field guide to the different shells. And then when we were growing up, we learned all the names of all of these shells. We knew all the creatures that lived in them and all that kind of stuff. And I've long forgotten all those names. I wish.
Yeah.
That's how we taught you about classification too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would collect all the shells, and then you would have to figure out what class it was in. You would divide them up into the classes.
That's
and
right. Yep.
All that. So
And then you stuck sticks in the sand where the high tide mark was, and then measured how far out there the next morning at low tide, how far the
Yep.
sea had retreated in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, there was just
and we would follow the tide for the whole month, and how far it came in, and then it would start. The highs and low tides would change. And
Yep.
So
Did we ever look at how that was correlating to the positions of the moon? I can't remember if we were doing that.
I
or
think we did. On
okay.
Good grief, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking
other
the
thing
other
we-
day, how many hours do you think we spent in St. Joseph's Bay?
oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
just ridiculous.
Oh man, yeah.
And that's the same bay that we were talking about where that midden mound was. It was all those shells.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so, Mom, you'll probably know what the name of this shell is.
Kyle is grabbing a shell from top shelf.
It's a king.
No,
Nope. All right, what is it, babe?
Florida conch.
Yes, but it's the ones that have these on it.
They're orange and reddish
Yeah.
colored when they're
When
'cause
they're
this one-
alive, yeah.
This one's white.
Oh,
Because
the
it's
other one
been-
has the things that go this way.
Yes.
That's
It's
the one I'm
been
thinking
cooked.
of.
Yes, the king's crown conch. you're
King's Crown,
thinking.
yeah. This is the regular Florida conch. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's been
And then
cooked.
there was
Because this came out of the midden.
The mid.
the giant ones you were talking about.
Yeah,
were lightning whelks.
That's
and
right.
It's like the only left-handed spiral snail shell. In other words, when you put your hand
yeah.
in any snail shell,
The
your
right hand goes in.
fits in there with the top up. The lightning whelk is the only left-handed snail in the world.
What?
And
Yep.
in the world. And you know how big those shells got. We were pulling them up 14, 15-inch long
Oh, yeah.
monsters.
and we used to find the live ones in that bay.
Yes.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
you're looking for these little snail tracks, and then suddenly you come across this road, and you're like, "What's that?"
What is this road?
It's this like huge freaking snail. And we take them out, and they'd close up, but you could just like put it on your arm or whatever and wait. And a little while later, that thing would just come out and
Yeah,
just go all the way
grab
around
it.
your arm.
Start walking down. You're moving its
they're
way
huge.
down your
Yeah,
arm.
they're enormous, giant.
But
Yes.
muscles.
this one,
Florida
So
conch.
this conch, normally when we would find them, they were all colorful, and this came out
Yes.
of the midden, and it's just white.
Yeah.
So
The heat.
Cooked?
Probably. Yeah, probably cooked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because most of the ones we found, unless they were very old, were still orange.
Yeah, I guess this could just be from age. Well, there's a little color right there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, really interesting.
And
Yeah,
then
that
I think Mom found might have been a Murex shell, and usually if you found an empty shell in the bay, a hermit crab had it.
That's
You
right.
Yeah, that's
remember
right.
how they crawled
Yeah.
along? Mom picked up one that wasn't moving,
Oh, yes.
And there was an octopus inside of it.
That's right.
With eggs hanging
babies.
down. Inside the shell, she was protecting them.
Yep.
You remember that?
Yeah.
I remember finding one where there were the baby octopi. Okay.
Octopodes is the proper
Octopodes?
nomenclature.
Octopodes.
Really? That's the plural of octopus?
Yeah,
Okay.
octopi is like
Well,
pseudo-Latin or something like
Okay.
that.
So we found one that had the little baby ones coming out of the shell. I don't even know if the mother was still in there. I'm not sure, but I remember finding that. I thought you found it.
Yeah, I remember finding multiple.
Yeah.
And I got bit by one of those guys. Not fun.
A beak bite.
Yeah, beak bite right on the hand.
The other thing that was interesting was they got Russ and Kyle, and we all did, but they got to the point where, and you have to remember, they were little. They were not very old at that time, where they could go in the bay and they would see a track from a shell, and they would be able to tell you what kind of shell and animal made that track before they dug it up. In other words, they got to where they could recognize the various tracks of the animals going through the water along the bottom of the bay. It was just amazing.
Scallops. Do you
Scallops,
remember
yes.
the scallops?
Yeah.
They had blue eyes.
Yeah.
Like brilliant
Bright.
blue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look like LEDs.
And they would
Look
close
like they
up
were
when you
pimped out with LEDs all around.
When
They
you picked
open
them
up.
up, they would close up, but if you just sat there really still for a while, they would finally open up and start peeking at you with all those blue eyes.
Yeah.
They were amazing.
A lot of learning in St. Joe's Bay and at the beach down
At the
there
beach,
Cape
yeah.
San Blas.
I think
It was amazing.
that's part of what disturbs me sometimes about this area here in Texas, because we did all that beach learning and we're looking at all the alive stuff, and I'm seeing, we see around here like they're like trapped in this stone here, and it's a little creepy because you can tell that they were all alive at the time of the what's he talking about?
Watcher says, also left-handed shells are an indication of intelligence. That's right. And yeah, you Watcher, you were the guy that found octopodes. So it's octopuses or octopodes. But
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Octopodes is not used anymore, but that's the one
That's
we
what
like.
we like. Yeah, Octopodes is way better.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm just saying that all that time spent on the beach learning about the current Holocene modern. Of course, I didn't know it was called that at the time, but this is the Holocene marine environment, at least for that area.
All those living creatures.
Yes, and then here it's the same stuff a lot of times, but they're trapped in stone.
And there's another aspect to the beach there. There were these banks that would be nothing but shells. I mean, it was just shells, and just embedded in the sand.
Right.
And they were fragmented, highly fragmented. And then there'd be areas of just pure sand, and then there'd be another bank, or you'd walk along the beach for a while. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, where it's just clean sand, and then you come to this bank of it's just really concentrated shell materials, right? They're deposited there by some current,
Yeah,
some wave action, whatever.
Yeah.
Highly fragmented. So around here, we find concentrated areas of complete closed clams. Like these are not animals that lived their lives and then died, and then their shells were fragmented and then deposited in pieces.
Right, like you find on
Their
beaches everywhere.
entire shelves, multiple feet thick in many cases, completely packed full of the same kind of clam and all of them are closed.
Right.
That's what's freaky about it.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It's freaky because like on the beach part down there, most of the time the shells you were looking at are like bones of of dead animals. Basically, that's what they are. They're just kind of washed up in their bones. In the bay, we're interacting with the live specimens because there were shells in there, but most of the time in the bay you could, because it wasn't surf, you could sort of see the live animals. They would be closed clams, still alive or whatever. And so interacting with that, and then coming out here and seeing like enormous shelves filled with what I recognize as these were alive. These creatures these are not the shell remnants of something that died naturally. These were all alive, and now they're fossils, which means they were entombed in material while alive, and have remained that way until the erosion has started to wash, expose them to the surface.
Well, just hope they all made their best fossil faces.
Probably right.
All right. Let's take a
Break time. All right. Snakes!
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Coprolite Studies here in the 10 by 10 by 10 Tangent Cube of Science, the headquarters of said institute, where there are no degrees, only certificates of ignorance.
That's right. And we are, and it's because it's 10 by 10 by 10, and there's 4 of us in here.
Yeah, this is not recommended by the CDC.
That's right.
We're not at the proper social distance.
That's right. We're each in our own corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But those corners are kind of close to each other.
That's right. I wanted to say one other thing about the beach stuff. Two things I remember distinctly. One was we got the seawater out of the ocean and brought it up to the house and boiled it until it all evaporated, and then we were left with all these salt crystals in the bottom, and I was just like blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then we just taste it. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just stuff doing stuff like that. And then the other thing was we were always fishing, and Dad caught some big shark, and we took the eyeballs out of the shark and took those up to the house.
Post-mortem.
Yes. And Mom taught us how to dissect the eye and taught us all the bits and pieces and parts of the inner eye.
Right, because that's one of your specialties, right?
Yes. My background is in ophthalmology.
Yeah.
So.
And you wrote papers. You worked with some. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was not an ophthalmologist. I was an orthoptist.
Okay.
Okay. I worked in pediatric ophthalmology and neuro-ophthalmology, and I specialized in the eye muscle and all the disorders and the related disorders that went with it. Like with children, children who have crossed eyes or one eye that goes out or one eye that goes up and things like that. But the main...
and those are muscle problems and...
Those are eye muscle problems.
Okay.
Some of them are neurological. It depends on, you can have a nerve problem that causes it rather than, yeah.
Yeah.
And, but the main problem with that is that in a child, when your vision is still so essentially flexible, so changeable, if the child doesn't, once their eyes are not aligned, they either see double or they look with one eye at a time. And a child can just very, very quickly learn to ignore one of the other images, and they don't see double. They just look with one eye at a time.
Right.
And if they're not...
So that becomes neurological then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
right?
happening. That's happening in the brain.
Their brain gets rid of one of the images, and then...
You suppress one image, and if there's a...
I'm familiar with this from being drunk. You have to learn to ignore one of your eyes in order to not see double.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I didn't think of that.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah.
The problem with children is if they choose one eye, then they use that exclusively over the other, they'll lose vision in the eye that they don't use.
It atrophies or something.
The vision, yes, the visual pathways just begin to atrophy. Exactly.
That's really strange.
And it can be very serious. So that's called amblyopia, and that was my specialty. I specialized in amblyopia because I trained at the University of Miami Medical School, the Department of Ophthalmology there, and the Dr. Flynn, under whom I trained, he was a world-renowned specialist in amblyopia. So he was my mentor, and I took up the love of treating amblyopia from him. And I cannot tell you how many children I've treated with amblyopia, and to see their vision come back is one of the most rewarding things, gratifying things in my life. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I have vague memories of you studying very hard. You used to study a lot, right? You would be.
Well, I went through. Dad and I got married, and a year later I started my graduate training, which was the ophthalmology part, the orthoptics part. You weren't born until after I was already working at the University of Texas Medical School in Houston.
Yeah, but you did some studying too.
You have to study all the time.
Right,
right. I took, every year you took continuing education, and so you have to study. It's in medicine. It's a constantly you're making new discoveries, and then also I was in research because I worked in a university setting. I was in research. So you're you're studying other people's papers and what they've written on this, and how to compare, and you sort of critique, and you think, well, I wonder why they didn't look at this. Well, let's take our group and we'll look at that, and so you do that kind of stuff. And then once we decided that I would stay home and raise children, and when we eventually decided to homeschool and everything, then I worked part-time in private practice.
Right.
And but still, it doesn't matter. You always have to study because you always want to know what's going on, what's the latest thing.
Yeah.
So, and I have to say that I also had many, many gratifying times working with patients of all ages, but also some elderly patients. I worked with a lot of patients who had cataract surgery, and after their cataract surgery, they saw double.
Yeah, they had to relearn to use that eye right.
So I worked with them, and sometimes it was just a matter of exercises and strengthening their ability to make their two eyes work together. It was called fusion. Other times it was I actually had to work with them and use prisms. Use prisms and they would have to put prisms into their glasses to bring the two images together to where they could fuse them. If they're vertical. If the images are displaced vertically, you have to use prisms. If they're horizontally, usually you can teach them to bring the two images together into fusion. But I just had some wonderful elderly people that were just so grateful when they weren't seeing double anymore.
Right.
So they were very fun to work with.
And that brings back stereo too. That's pretty important to have stereo vision. Yeah.
Yes.
So you would start with a prism setup that was just beyond their perfect fused images, so that they had to work to get it to fuse, and then you kept changing the prisms. How did you get them to get back to normal?
Well, no. If it's vertical, the prisms were actually then I had them
completely.
I had those prisms. Their glasses made with the prisms in them. In other words, they were ground in such a way to add that little bit of prismatic.
Right.
And so the rest of their lives,
they just wear the glasses.
They wore the glasses.
If
they took their glasses off, they'd see double.
If it's vertical displacement, it can't be corrected.
They can't. If it's huge
it can't
thing
be fixed,
and it's neurologic,
yeah.
then you can do surgery for it.
Okay.
And I have actually had a couple of my elderly patients that ended up having surgery to bring their vision back to single vision, and that was another thing that was very gratifying because they're afraid.
Yeah.
When they've had their cataract surgery, they think everything is going to be wonderful. And now they've got two eyes that see really well, and they've got these two really clear pictures that don't go together.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're told now you have to go back into surgery. And so they were usually kind of fearful. And so I had one elderly gentleman, and he said, "Will you come to the and hold my hand?" And
oh, wow.
When I had the surgery, and so. The doctor I work with, Dr. Meza, was like, well, he said, you can just come down to pre-op, and by the time we give him all the drugs, he won't know you're not there. I'm like, you want me to stay hold his hand through the whole surgery? But anyway, it was very gratifying.
But you did assist in surgery a lot. I know that
I did that when I was in training. I never had to do it once I was. I didn't assist in surgery after I was actually practicing myself.
Oh,
that was part of my training. I had to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the training, you learn so much beyond what you have to use because you need to understand it. You need to understand how the eyes work. You know how the. So I mean, I spent time in surgery. I was in every department of ophthalmology. I spent time in. Spent a lot of time in neuro-ophthalmology, which was my favorite secondary thing after childhood. You know, the pediatric. I loved neuro-ophthalmology.
What is a diopter?
It's a prismatic measurement.
Okay, explain. She
it-
used to measure how much
it bends the light.
Okay.
So when light comes into a prism, it comes in, you know, like it's just coming in straight, and the prism actually bends the light toward the apex of the prism. Okay, bends the light, and so that way, when the light's coming into your eye, if this eye's too high, then you put the prism in there and it bends it. It bends it so that you can the two that come in aligned correctly as they come into the and fall upon the retina.
Okay.
So that's why a prism works. And so let's say I had a patient that, you know, it took 4 diopters of vertical prism to correct their double vision. That's not enough to really go in and do surgery. So they all had to wear glasses back then. They didn't do cataracts to the point where people didn't wear glasses after cataracts.
Right.
And so they would just build two into each lens. You couldn't look at the lenses and tell that they had prism in it. It wasn't.
So 4 diopters is not enough for you to be like, wow, this person has a triangle in their glasses.
Yes, no, it's not.
pyramid.
Okay.
There's no pyramid in their glasses. That's right.
All right.
But
If it got too much larger, then we ended up having to do surgery.
But what I'm saying is, Mom used to measure these diopters to make recommendations for these eye surgeons.
Oh well, yes, that's a different thing. All right, so when someone's going in to have surgery, they need to know exactly how far off
Yeah.
their eyes are. And with children, it could be huge amounts, you know. So I would give them the exact amount, the prismatic diopters that the eyes were off. How many prismatic diopters you would have to put up in front of that eye of that child or whoever to align them perfectly. And then they would know how much they had to move the muscles in order to get that much correction. Okay?
Wow.
Precision work.
It was precision work. Yes, you got
Optical
those.
precision, no less.
Yeah. So
That's cool. I remember you had the rods of the different diopters.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was a rod and let's say
it was a bar.
Just like look at a ruler. Yeah, a bar. Like imagine a ruler where every inch is a different angle prism all the way down to nearly flat.
And I had a vertical one and a horizontal one.
Yeah.
That's
So-
right. Yeah, there were 2 of them.
There were 2 of
And
them.
I used to always steal them.
Yep.
And play with them.
Look through things and make them move.
Yes.
Yeah. You could if you raised it up and down in your eye, this stuff would go ding 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 ding.
That's right. and they also made really cool colors out of everything.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
The lights coming through would then
Well,
break
that's
into
what I
them.
was getting at.
Okay,
Not-
I didn't think about
I
that.
wanted to tell everyone that you did precision work. You recommended surgical measurements for surgeons
And sometimes the procedures, which
and the procedures. Some of the doctors listened to you. But she also chaired national meetings all over the country and presented papers.
That's what I was talking about. I was like, yeah,
She's
I remember.
very accomplished back in the day at this particular field. I was just very proud of her when she told me, well, I got to go to San Francisco and I'm chairing the national convention on ophthalmology and I got to present a paper and so you need to play with the boys while and do the homeschooling too.
Matt, you better not have any. I'm gonna have to look at those papers. There better not be any scriptard stuff in there.
Oh no, we have her book of published papers. Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Wow, that's cool. That's really
so
cool.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, but and probably and I know that part of the reason why the challenge of homeschooling was just to me really cool because it just that the work that I did was very challenging. And so then, homeschooling was very challenging. It was challenging both educationally, to make sure that you're, giving your children what they need and you're staying ahead of them. at times on certain things. But also it's challenging for and the stay-at-home mom, because I'd gone from this big career to staying home with my kids, and I never found that boring. Even before I was homeschooling, I mean, I still loved, being a stay-at-home
Nazi.
mom. I still love being a stay-at-home mom, but when we started when we started homeschooling, that was just such a great and wonderful challenge. But on the other side of it is, it's a sacrifice. I mean, you really start finding out how selfish you are when you're homeschooling your kids. It's like, I have to give up this, and I have to give up that, and I'm giving up this, and you can take that like not like it, or you can say, well, I'm giving it up for a really good reason, but you have to kind of work through it.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine.
Because it's so. I have to say that I grew as a person tremendously through the 11 years that we homeschooled, because self-sacrifice makes you grow as a person.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
That is an interesting concept that I would like to get to in another segment. But before we go on, because that is a weird thing, and there's something weird about the ancient world and a lot of the texts about this whole idea of self-sacrifice, and it's just it's curious. Why can't we all be doing whatever we want and everything be awesome? That's the question. But I'd like to get into that later. First, I want tell me some eyeball stories.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did you find out that eyeballs are bouncy? That's the story I want to hear.
by dropping one in a lab.
Yeah, that story. Chased it down the hallway.
Oh my gosh.
It was looking for a way out.
Susie, my partner in crime, the class that I was in, they took 2 students a year.
Wow.
And so you were like glued to that part. You did everything with this one other person. So for 2 years, Susie and I, the other person that was accepted into the program the year that I was, they only took two of the applicants each year.
Wow.
And so you just come like, what do you call it?
Yeah.
Joined at the
Attached
hip practically, yeah. And so we were in the lab, we were doing dissecting, we were in there to dissect eyeballs, and those things are round and roly-poly. They're like marbles.
Very slippery.
Yeah.
And they also
They're kinda
come out of a
slick.
solution, and they're very slippery. They're wet, they're slippery, they're round, they're kind of hard. And
So a lot like a Super Bowl, right?
yeah, exactly. There you go.
That's
It's like
that's the
dropping
picture I always got from this story.
Except
was like,
you have to remember that there's that cornea on one side.
Right,
so it's
right.
like a
So
Super
it's-
Bowl. It's got a little bubble on it.
right. So it's
Which makes it, you can't figure out
erratic.
which, you cannot predict which way it's going to go.
Somewhat like a football.
yeah, that's right. A Super
So,
Bowl
yes.
with a flaw in it, so that you cannot predict the bounces.
So yes, I dropped an eyeball and it was chasing it down.
That's hilarious.
I don't think I ever told Dr. Flynn that story.
He's going to hear it now because he's
Yeah.
a big
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah, huge fan of the podcast.
Yeah.
But just going back, that's why she carried the eyeballs of a shark up to the house to, hey guys, come over here. And started cutting the shark eyeballs open and showing us all the different parts and how.
But was the first thing you showed us, did you say, this is the eyeball of a soulless eating machine? Now let me show you how it's a lot like a human eye on the inside.
Which it is very much alike.
Did I say that?
I'm just, no.
don't think so.
I don't remember
It's
the
a
eyeball
shark
dissections. Yeah, I don't remember the eyeball dissection, but I just think if I was going to look at a shark eyeball, I'd be like, this is the eye of a soulless eating machine. That's what it looks like. When you see them, their eyes are
Yes.
they have this thing that happens, they're black, but when they open their mouths, isn't there like a protective shield? I'm trying to remember. There's something automatic that happens when their jaw opens that this
The skin goes up in
Yeah.
front of their eyes and
Yeah.
protects them.
Yeah, soulless eating machine. Solid black eyeballs with shields.
He was breathing.
Yeah, yeah. He was out of breath. That's right.
So one of the other things about the eye is it's true, right, that the actual image that's projected onto the back of our eye is upside down, and our brain flips that image over.
That's correct.
Isn't that strange?
That is strange. Very strange.
So do you think when a baby is first born that their brain isn't flipped the image over yet?
Good question. I like that.
Because I know there have been
They may know now, but I don't think
there have
we
been
didn't
these
know.
very fascinating studies that people have done where they make special glasses that turns the image over. So and then they do this study where they agree to wear them all the time. So
Pretty soon it flips.
everything they see is upside down, and then after a few days, or some people it takes a week or so, it turns back over, and then they can once again drink out of cups and eat properly, and they're not stumbling around everywhere. And then they take the glasses off, and then it's all upside
Have to go
down,
through the process
and it
again.
takes days or weeks for it to reacclimate.
It just shows you how amazingly
Versatile.
our brain is and how it can reprogram, and it's just
Yeah.
an incredible organ. The
Yeah.
brain.
It's just interesting because, well, I mean, what is the mechanism there? What part of the brain is saying this image is upside down?
Exactly.
Right.
Why can't it just be upside down?
Right.
And
Well,
we just get used to
It
that.
is upside down, but our world picture isn't. That's where I'm wondering,
yeah.
like, what part of the brain are we actually talking about doing the flipping here?
I would have to go back and look at that. It's just been too long.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how that.
Gravity.
How or where.
Your brain says, dude, that's down.
If I drop
Flip
it
that
and it
thing
goes
over.
up, the image is upside down.
Our brain has gravitational sensory in it.
Okay, the watcher is saying the great white shark doesn't have a membrane to cover its eyes, so it rolls its pupil into the back of the head.
Okay.
But the rest of them do have the membrane.
Neuroplasticity.
Yes, neuroplasticity,
That's
that's
the
right.
word. Thank you,
That's
Brett.
the word for the
Thank you, Watcher.
for the ability of the brain to change pathways.
yeah, neuroplasticity.
Right. But I think you're right. Yeah. If you drop something and it goes up, then the brain knows that image is flipped over. Because everything else is telling you that stuff is being pulled this way, down towards the ground. So if you drop it and it goes poof.
Well, you also have to
So
realize
if we
that-
were born in space, things might be really weird. Like
Yeah.
we might actually.
How would your brain learn to flip it
You
over?
actually brought that up in the last podcast. You were talking about, were we waterborne? Well, in the womb, you are waterborne.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So anything you came from water.
Yeah.
So if you have any
come from the
remnants of
water.
and that's why we have to go to the beach because we want to.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Because we
Have
came from
to.
water. And
Yeah,
it
that's
was
right.
it was a saline solution.
Because
right.
we've got to, mister.
Put the water in the egg. Have the baby in the egg, in the water, on land. Right?
So while y'all were homeschooling in those years, we spent an average probably of about 6 weeks a year in Florida on the beach.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good amount of time.
It also taught us a lot about, one of the lessons I remember learning is how there were catastrophic things that would take place, right? So we would go down there and everything would be changed from the year before because of a hurricane.
Yes.
And you'd have to relearn landmarks and, there would be whole areas of the beach that we were familiar with that had been enormous that were now like a little pathway, very narrow. So the water, and then of course always people learn, there's sandbars and sometimes there's 3 and sometimes there's none and nobody, and why is this happening? And so we talk about there's all this movement of water and it's pulling sand up and out, So there was all that kind of stuff was very interesting. And of course that ties into now when we're thinking about enormous movements of water and land. And just, I remember back how there were dunes there. So one of the things about that place was it had dune protection something, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It did. It was
People
called
were-
a DNR line, Department of Natural Resource, and it was dunes. You couldn't build a structure on the Gulf side of the dunes other than
Right. And some of the dunes were
walkway.
enormous, like
Yes.
huge.
Yes. And you were not allowed to climb on the dunes.
Right.
Which, when we first came back to Texas and went down to South Padre and we'd see people climbing on the dunes. I mean,
Yeah, we're
Dad
like,
and I
what are
was
you doing? Yeah.
But
It's punishable by death.
But that's absolutely right. There was erosion and sand that was a big, long beach would be cut off in a sheer wall with shells sticking out. And then you go over to this end of the cape and there'd be a big deposit of sand over there.
Yeah. So once we would learn that, and then sometimes we'd be down there and an enormous storm would come through.
That's what I was going to say.
And it would completely change the beach over one night or maybe the 2 days or whatever. And we get these gigantic rolling waves coming in.
And Dad would put on our life jackets and drag us way out there, wait for a huge wave and just toss you. Have fun!
Yeah.
And the wave would wash you all the way into the dune wall.
Yeah, that's right. Smashed into the dune wall. It was awesome.
It was the best bodies. I heard those waves from the condo. I go, let's go, boys. Of course,
Oh,
it
man.
Scared the crap out of me, but I
I've
love it. I
never
had to go
seen
back for more.
I never saw anybody go as far as you did, Kyle,
Yeah.
in a body surfing wave
Yep.
and come back crying.
I still want
Why
to
are
do it
you
again.
crying? To get my head slammed into the dune wall.
But yeah, that's what I was going to say. There are these gigantic dunes. And, you know, if you're staying down there for a month, some of these features on it, because we're just on the beach all the time. And it's a fairly small area. So you would become very familiar, like it's your backyard. You know, like that dune, or, you know, if you walk down or whatever, there's this enormous set of dunes. And then we'd come back one year and the whole beach has changed. And one of those dunes is like cut, you know, and there would be this wall of sand. And you just learned, like, oh my God, that's this enormous permanent structure has been completely altered and half of it's gone just by water movement since we've been here before. And that's
Yeah, in one season.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
And then we found the tilted house that was like falling into the ocean, and then we eluded it
yes,
of the canned goods that were in the pantry.
that's right.
What?
And,
This is the first time I heard about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember, so after one of the big hurricanes,
I'm calling it looting. We were kids. We didn't know. It was
Yeah.
falling into the ocean. We climbed inside.
we were like, let's go look at
We
this
were in
thing
the
that's
leaning
falling
house.
down into the ocean. Very dangerous.
Hold your ears and hum real loud while they tell this.
And we found
my
canned
gosh.
goods and some WD-40 in the cabinets.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, this will be fun. So
Yeah.
we built a fire and we tried every one in the fire.
Yeah, to see how
Oh, God.
big they would explode.
And they all the WD-40 cans and other spray paint cans made spectacular explosions.
But
You know, we'd throw it in there and then we'd run and we'd hide behind a dune and it would blow up and we were like, yeah. And then
Yeah.
and eventually we threw in the can of Campbell's soup.
Yeah,
and
cream-
nothing.
cream
we
mushroom.
ran and hid behind the dunes. Nothing happened. We waited. Nothing happened. Okay, so we went back and we just hung out by the fire. And right when we were like, all right, let's go, we got up, turned around to leave. Pop! Just covered us in
cream of mushroom, or
burning
something.
hot cream of mushroom soup.
Jump in the water.
Yeah.
So
the soup got the last
That's
Great
another thing we
story.
learned: not to throw canned goods into fires
Great
and
story.
stick around.
Yeah, and hang out.
Some bombs take a long time to explode.
Oh my gosh. That's the first time I've heard that story.
Me too.
Really?
Do you
Yes.
remember? You remember that house that was
Oh,
falling?
Oh, I remember
too.
the house
Yeah.
very well. They finally
yeah,
had
we
to
climbed
take the
all
house
in it.
down.
Yeah.
That was not something
No,
that
yeah,
they
of course. You
requested.
guys weren't down there.
Information from they didn't come and say, "Hey, can we go climbing that house?"
Yeah, of
No.
course not. No.
That was a
No, we were like, let's just do this, and then we'll tell it to him years later on a podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the plan.
oh gosh.
But yeah, I think that whole scenario, the beach scenario, was probably one of the best learning experiences.
The
I mean,
other-
obviously the textbooks and all that kind of stuff was useful, but in terms of fun and just, I don't know.
Well, and
like
translating information from those textbooks into stuff you're dealing with in a physical
yeah.
reality.
Right.
You
And
know.
plus, you
And
know,
the
we
fishing,
lived in
of
the we
course.
lived in
Dad
the woods.
was constantly teaching us because Dad goes down there, and you know, if you fish in the ocean, there's just a million things out there that you could
That's
possibly
right.
catch. So every cast, you know, it's possible that you're going to catch some completely unknown crypto monster.
Yeah. A guitar fish. How about that?
Yeah, and we'd pull in stuff.
What
We're like,
is
what
that?"
is that?
It's a guitar fish. Look it up.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and there were lots of different kinds of sharks. So we shovel heads and
Yep.
black tips, of course, which most people are familiar with. What else? Hammerheads were out there, and they're
Yeah,
just, you know, you pull them in, and they're like these weird shapes. You're like, why does his head look like that?
Bull sharks.
Yeah.
Spinners. Man, lots
And
of
then
them.
tons of catfish styles, and then there would be we would fish for, I can't remember what did this, but there would be some fish that would have this and I don't remember if it was like this all the time, but there was like a sparkly I don't know what to call it, slime, some kind of mucus. And sometimes when we'd catch them, all of them, you know, not all the time, but sometimes when we'd catch this kind of fish, I can't remember what it kind of was, they would have this sparkly stuff that would be coming off. And we're like, why do they look like that right now? Because we'd catch them at some other time and they didn't have that. There was always just really interesting stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The phosphorus. That was
The
cool.
phosphorus
Oh,
was
yes,
great.
we
And
would go out at
why
night
is it
and-
green and then it's blue? And,
Scratch the sand and make the phosphorescent.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
sometimes it was strong enough to where the wave breaking would do
At
it.
night.
Oh, and that
Yeah.
was, you go out
We
when it was
went
really
down there
dark
at
at
night.
night
Yeah.
and watch the phosphorus in the waves.
And the
Yeah.
crabs.
Wonderful.
Man, they would come out by the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. Yep.
But what I'm going to say is, a couple things. But one more thing about the beach. One great thing was, because we homeschooled, we went down in April and then around Thanksgiving. So we didn't have to be there in the summer when it was crowded. We had the whole place to ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was really great.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, we had a wonderful place at home. We lived in the wood. You know, we lived on 18 acres in the woods, and we had, you know, trails and just, you know, the creek and.
Yep, that was the other thing. Dad had his field guides. We learned all the names of all the trees and all this stuff. Like, it was like everywhere we went, we learned all
There he is.
There's
all
the
of the
guitar
terms
shark.
and all of the different. I don't know. That was cool.
Yeah.
I need
Learning the names of the
Gibson to make
trees.
me one just like that.
Yep.
Watchers posted a picture of the guitar shark up
Yes, there it is.
here.
Looks pretty rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's rocking.
Definitely rock and roll there.
All right.
So,
Yeah. Break time.
Halftime.
Halftime.
wow, that went fast.
Yeah. It goes the fastest 2 hours in podcasting.
That's right.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, for the second try at the second half of the Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 140. We had this issue where the Snake Bros' most forgotten artifact, the record button.
In this case, it was the Watcher's record button.
Right. So we wanted to bring the Watcher on for this segment, at least for part of it, because we're having really interesting, break time discussions between the Watcher and the parents and stuff. So as you know, we're joined by the whole family in here. And so we're going to go ahead and bring the Watcher in from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Feeling a lot of pressure. I got to remember everything we talked about the first time
Yeah.
to make sure that it makes it in here the second time.
Verbatim.
But mainly it was that as I've been listening, it's been really interesting to me because I followed a different educational path, but developed the same sort of approach to the world mentally, which was it's really interesting to me.
You were in Montessori, you said. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, up through the 5th grade, and then other private schooling, but didn't hit the public school system till about 9th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, see, the key is you want to go into public school in the 10th grade. Otherwise, you don't get a full-time speaking position in the podcast.
It's essentially the story of my life, man. Always almost, but not quite.
I mean,
But,
the problem is that if we gave him a full-time speaking position, it would just be the Brett show. Because the dude can talk. So.
Okay, and the thing is that they know that's not true because I've been a guest before and other people talked.
I don't know, man. Most of the clips that came out of that show was you talking and us laughing at stuff you were saying.
Fair enough. I mean, the sound bites from those episodes are all me, but it's not my fault that I'm the most quotable. But back on track.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we had talked about the first time around was that it's really interesting how, your parents, Sonny especially, sort of honed in on this method of teaching and approach to take to the way that they homeschooled you. That is, the educational world looks at Maria Montessori, her method, and all of the things that have been done with it as like the premier best way to teach. And she sort of did it by intuition. And that's awesome. Like that is absolutely incredible. That's an achievement.
Yeah, what I had told Brett was I was unaware of Montessori at that point when I began homeschooling, and now we're at the place where we're beginning to homeschool Sol, Kyle's son, and so I've done a lot of research into Montessori, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is pretty much this is kind of what we did. I mean, there's the basic thing is that you provide an environment for the child to want to learn, and then they will begin to take learning on themselves. They'll get curious and they'll go study this and they'll get into that and that's exactly what happened with my kids. And of course, having two kids, they took it on in two entirely different ways. But
Laura was the one that pointed you towards the Montessori.
Laura pointed me toward Montessori, yes, because she was really interested in it with Sol. And so we're, as she and I have talked about homeschooling and how we're going to homeschool Sol, because it's, it is a family project. I mean, of course, you and she will be
We're
doing...
all going to argue about it until Sol's educated.
That's right. So far, it's going great.
But I studied Montessori, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So integrating that into the homeschool a little bit more. Laura's a very organized person.
Right. She doesn't fit in here at all.
She's very organized, and she's very scheduled. And, one of the things that we were talking about was that, or we've talked about frequently over the years, is if I had to say what would I have done differently about homeschooling? About the only thing I could say is that not when they were really young, but as they got older, I probably should, I would have probably put in more scheduling.
And taught Kyle to read. Should have done that.
Okay, that has to do with different learning methods. But anyway, and of course they come right back at me and say, well, no. Well, okay, so I say I probably should have scheduled it all more because you have terrible problems with scheduling.
Yeah.
To this day, you have problems with scheduling. And so what's your response to that?
Well, I was just thinking that it... I don't know what it would have been like had we been put on a rigorous schedule, but there was an element of freedom there for us to both like pursue what we wanted to pursue and spend as much time on that as we wanted. But also it is sort of kind of, it's made me in such a way that I can just deal with whatever happens. I can go with the flow. Like I can either deal with a schedule, but if things go catastrophically wrong with the schedule, it doesn't faze me at all.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's I don't rely on it, but I am having to learn now later in life, like really work on scheduling all of these responsibilities that I have and using a calendar and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Using a calendar in the boring way. That doesn't have anything to do with astronomy and weird stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, look at this fascinating tool.
Yeah.
It teaches me about giant circles in space.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I'm supposed to use this to organize my life. Well, that's no fun.
So that's been a challenge to overcome, just living spontaneously.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah.
And,
Can't do that all the time.
and I would like to point out that we were regulated by the state.
The homeschooling.
And so, yes, to have you tested every 3 years to make sure you were met the standards that were set by a government entity. And what we found was that almost every time you two were tested, you well exceeded what was your expected grade level for reading, for math, for comprehension, for any of those tests that we did. But we had to sign up to take the state tests. We had to take the kids to a school. Generally, it was a high school, I think, and have them tell them, hey, go in there and just think about this stuff. You already know it. Do the best you can and take these standardized tests. Homeschoolers that we knew in our neighborhood, we became part of a group. It ballooned like you can't believe for some reason, but all those kids, and our kids included, tested well above their grade level every time we took them in there.
Right.
And when Kyle, excuse me, came back to Texas and was going to be a sophomore in homeschooling, the state said, "Oh no, he'll never pass the freshman
sophomore
exam."
in high school.
Yeah, sophomore in high
Public
school.
school, yeah, public school.
In public school, that he wouldn't be able to pass the tests, and he and Mom said, "Well, bring him on. Let's test him." And he got the test, the state mandated test from Texas Tech. And I don't think he'd taken geography for 2 years, but he rolled through all that and passed no problem. And the school district was saying, oh, he's going to have to start as a freshman. No homeschooler passes these tests.
Wow.
And Kyle just plowed through them and just in your face like, how about that?
They made me a freshman anyway.
Yeah.
When I first started school, because I was having to take the placement tests all
Right.
through my first year. So I was a freshman, even though I was in all sophomore classes. And I was like, every time they would say over the loudspeaker, "All freshmen, please come to the cafeteria for blah blah blah," I would be like, I ain't going. And my teacher would be like, "You're a freshman, go." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." You know, so I got in trouble for that.
Wow.
But the placement tests, I had to make 90 or above to pass.
Oh, wow.
They
That
weren't
was
70 or
right.
above.
You couldn't just I remember that.
Yeah,
being,
it wasn't
"What?"
just,
It was hard.
just a 70. It was.
I was. My point was, if they took 100 of those kids that are sophomores now and gave them those tests, what percentage of them do you think would pass at 90% or above?
I don't know.
So, anyway.
But yeah, then when I finally finished them all, my actual junior year, they went ahead and made me a sophomore anyway, even though I was in all junior classes. It happened all the way to my senior year, and in my senior year, I was classified as a junior, and then at some point they switched me to a senior before I graduated. It was ridiculous.
grief.
Yeah. Took them 3 years.
Oh man, I didn't know
to believe, I didn't remember that part.
They just,
that. Wow.
yeah, it was just probably just
Harassment.
whatever it was, I don't know. the watchers posting obscenities
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
That was a good transition, I think. It was, because that was structure. There was a lot of structure in that system. The learning was really difficult because I was not used to learning in the classroom setting where, you know, I was just being lectured to, and I asked a bunch of questions because and I guess my questions came out of left field to these teachers, and they're just like,
They still come out of left field.
What are you talking about? But yeah, so that was hard. But I had a couple of teachers that really kind of took me under their wing and really helped me out. It gave me confidence in that environment. So it was cool. I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I went to college and I was like, More of same. I'm out of here.
All right, we have a so earlier today we told the snake pit, the troll room in the Discord that we were going to do this, and so we said, any questions you guys have, and don't ask for baby pics, right? So the first thing that happened was you guys got labeled as snake handlers. You run this risk when you talk to the troll room.
Oh,
Okay.
man, there's
That's
a story.
hysterical.
Yeah.
There's a story. Snake catching contest.
Oh, yeah.
So Jeff, you guys know, we talk about Jeff. He runs the Discord and he runs the library of the Serpent. He said, when did the parents realize that they were snake handlers? So that's when you should tell that story.
Oh, man. Jeff, thanks for the question. We lived in the woods in Georgia. And, of course, there was plenty of snakes of all kinds. And some of them we caught, the smaller ones, until one day Kyle and I were cutting trees down for firewood in a new right-of-way, and a humongous bull snake rolled out from under a log. And I go, Kyle, look at that size of that snake. And he goes, catch him, Dad. And man, my manhood was just put on the line right there. I'm going, oh my gosh, I got to catch this constrictor monster who's minding his own business in his own territory, and I'm an intruder. Anyway, I managed to grab him behind the head, and oh my gosh, he wrapped 3 things around my arm so fast, coils, and my right arm started to swell up while my left arm got little. He goes, let's go show him to Mom. And I go, we got to put him in the truck? No way I'm putting this monster in the truck. He was at least 5 feet long. So I rolled down the window. It was a hand-crank 78 Chevy pickup. I put my arm through the window with this monster snake around it, got in the driver's seat, closed the door while I was holding the snake outside. Kyle jumped in the passenger side. We drove back to the house and showed Mom, look at this. And she goes, oh my gosh, look at that snake. Anyway, we had a contest. There were a lot of king snakes around, and we knew they were the good guys, and we knew they, took care of our venomous snakes. A lot of the time, a king snake will kill a rattler or a copperhead.
Yeah.
And so they were the good guys. We caught a couple little ones, and we started this contest, like, who can catch the biggest king snake? So I brought one home that might have been 2.5 feet long and showed it to everybody. Oh, that's cool. We put it in a terrarium for a couple days and fed it, and then we turned it loose in the woods. And then Mom and Russ and Kyle were in the car going somewhere. I think we had a Volvo station wagon, if you can imagine that. She carried a pillowcase in there just to catch a bigger.
So we're driving down the road, and we're like, look at that king snake. There was a king snake on the road, and Russ and Kyle like, catch it, Mom, catch it. It's bigger than Dad's. Catch it. So I pull over and jump out with the pillowcase and throw it over the king snake's head and get him and bring him home.
Turn it inside out.
Turn it inside out with the snake inside. And they're like, yeah.
He went right to sleep?
Yeah.
He went right to sleep. Just,
Yeah.
I probably handed him to Russ and said, okay, you hold him while we go back to the
Yeah.
So anyway, when Dad got home from work that night, we had the bigger snake. We were so excited.
That thing was huge.
It was big.
It was a beauty. So yeah, that's Snake Mom. She won the contest. No,
That's when they found out they were snake handlers.
Yeah,
They
see,
answered
we're
the
snake
question.
handlers.
Yeah.
And I've always done that to this day. But around here, the ones I like are the puff adders, the hog noses.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I see a hog nose, I'll catch them, keep them in the terrarium for a while, and feed them and let them go.
Yeah.
But they're really cool.
Yeah, they sure are.
All right, this one's from Meese, which is like in that two.
More than 2.
It's more than one moose, right?
Yeah.
Or more than one mouse.
Did your parents know some of the topics you discuss before you started the podcast, and did you talk about those topics with them before?
We were not very familiar with the topics that they talk about now. These were things that they became interested in and they did the deep dives into. But they talked to us about it plenty.
Yeah.
So from the time they began to get interested in it, they began talking to us about it. And at first, it was just, I wasn't real interested because I didn't know that much about it and I didn't know how far it was going to go. But the longer they studied this stuff and the more they talked to us about it, the more interested in it we became. And I have to say, my eyes were really opened about a lot of things through the things that Russ and Kyle have talked to us about, the whole world of science. And I was in the scientific world and the journals and all this kind of stuff, never even considered some of the issues about scientific papers and things that they've come across. And then just sort of like the, mind expanding way of looking at our history, our ancient history. That to me has just been fascinating. Yeah. And it all makes sense to me. I mean, they kind of joke around about me being a mystic, but, to me, in the way I relate to God, the things that they talk about and the way the creation and the ancient civilizations, and it's all like, well, yeah, that just makes so much sense, So I had never thought about it. So I do feel like it's been it's really expanded my horizons. So it's like, I was the teacher and now they're the teachers.
Yeah.
We're learning from them constantly,
exactly.
aren't we?
I concur 100%. The curriculum we chose always had teacher's guides that Sonny and I would read. So when you give a child a book on world history that starts with Sumer, and what happened there, and then comes forward through the pyramids and the Egyptians and the Greeks and all this stuff, you're like, whoa, this is really amazing. And then forgot about it once they got done with that book.
But we really did get into archaeology.
We did.
In homeschool.
Oh, yeah,
We
whole
did a
Mayan thing.
massive
Yeah,
dig.
we did the
Yes.
digs and everything, yes.
That was really cool. So we went to a pottery class. We were learning how to make pottery every Wednesday or something.
There was a Thursday out of every month or something. It wasn't.
No,
we couldn't go that
no.
often.
We went once a week
thought we
for a
went once
long
a week.
time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Man.
So we were learning how to use all these tools to make pottery, and we did that for a long time. And as again this homeschooling environment was built up, more and more of those people would come to the pottery class, and we were all learning how to spin the potter's wheel and make pots and use the tools to make the little ropes out of the clay, and then turn the ropes into pots, and just all these different techniques of making stuff out of clay. And eventually we ended up doing this dig,
We
and
were
I don't know
studying
who's
ancient civilizations.
That's right. And I don't know whose
Dorothy
idea.
Gibson's
Okay,
idea.
so our neighbor,
Yeah, you just doxed her.
Oh, sorry, Dorothy.
Johnson.
Dorothy Johnson.
So we made all these clay pots and we glazed them and all this stuff. We made paper mache helmets and armor and stuff like that, and then we smashed the clay pots and all this stuff.
You painted them.
We they were glazed and everything.
Painted and glazed, and it was all done on the style of the civilization.
Well, each family, there were 3 families, and each family chose a civilization. They did not tell the other families.
Right.
So this was done in secret. We chose the Minoans.
The Minoans.
So we made all of this stuff. And they were, and this was back in the days when they were digging the cave.
That's right.
In the side of the hill. So we
Okay,
buried
well,
all.
that needs an explanation.
You haven't
Yeah.
explained this on the podcast
When you can't
before?
find a cave, make
Dig
one.
one.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So we dug this tunnel into the side of a hill, and it was big enough for multiple people to go into, somewhat hunched over
Yeah.
at that time.
That's
Right.
right.
And so we made all of our artifacts, and we buried them along with a paper skeleton because
That's
we
right.
didn't have a real skeleton.
Yeah. It's too bad.
And
could've
With
got
a couple of real eyeballs.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
and then the other, for each one of us, we had to go to their property, and we had to, section off the dig, like you would do in an archaeological dig with your crosses, and you dug everything and sifted it, and you kept it, what you found in each place, and then you were supposed to figure out what the civilization
civilization it
the other
was.
person was
That's right.
had recreated.
Great
Yeah.
project.
So it was a wonderful
So the
project.
cave one that we did, I remember we had the Minoan horns we had made out of clay. And after we got all the pottery fragments and the skeleton down in the bottom of the cave that we had, and the cave was, it was in sandy, sandstone-ish dirt, basically. We got the skeleton in there and all the pottery fragments or whatever, and then we covered it in a couple of inches of dirt.
But you missed one part. The beautiful whole pot that we sent and Aunt Kathleen painted
That's
with the
right.
Yeah.
with the
Dancing
bull
bulls.
dancers,
With the
Yes.
dancing
the
bulls
bull dancers
from
on
the Minoan civilization, yeah.
Oh my gosh, we
But
need to
the
put
horns
that on the
were
feed.
at the
I
head.
still have it.
The horns were at the head of the skeleton, and those horns were sticking out of the dirt. And
Oh,
the
that's
pot was
right.
above the dirt too. So when the people came up to the cave, they just saw this hole in the hill, and it was obviously an ancient burial site. It's like you could tell. And there were these artifacts already there, and then they started to dig down, and you find the skeleton, you find shattered pottery, and then they had to look at the art style and recognize the clues. And it was a blast project. I mean, it was more fun making.
I
the
wish
site.
we would have known the name Potsherds back then.
Yeah.
Pot shirts.
We didn't have pot shirts. We probably did. But anyway, so that's one way that they got so interested in archaeology. We really just went overboard on the archaeology stuff. We loved it.
Yeah, and also there were beautiful arrowheads in that area.
Yes.
Kyle used to
Y'all-
find them all the time, and of course we didn't. For some reason, that connecting that to archaeology took longer. It was a
Yeah, I was connecting the arrowheads to bamboo shafts and shooting them into
back
the
into the
forest.
woods.
That's right. God, I lost so many amazing arrowheads.
But there was also this is going off tangent a bit. We're gonna get back to the questions, but there was also the creek down there on that property was always a fascinating study in water and moving material around, right? And I remember thinking when I was first listening to Randall talk about moving, large amounts of water moving and what it does with its sediment loads as it's going around corners in the canyon that it's moving in, and how the inside of the corner, of the curve, the water moves slower, and so it drops the sediment load there, and so you end up with a little, what are they called? The little
Sandbar.
bank, a little, yeah. And I remember the first thing I thought of was our old the creek, because I remember, you walk through and why is this mound of material here, and all the pebbles are the same size.
Yeah.
In these little bars that are on the inside turns, and I'm like, and it just makes so much sense. So I just I still connect stuff to that property.
Wow.
Because we used to walk, we'd go out there, we'd pack a backpack and walk that creek all day.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And the outside
Hours
of the
and
turn
hours
was
of it.
just a solid wall of Georgia
Yep.
clay and
Sheer
roots.
wall.
Right. And that's where the water was, because it had cut there instead of dropping stuff.
Yep. And so when the level went down, the water was all the way up against the shear wall, and then there was
Yeah.
this sloping bank on the inside of the curve.
Right. And it was
With all the sifted rocks and
yeah,
different.
the bank was made up of pebbles that were basically all the same size. And you're like,
Yeah.
how does this happen? Oh, well, it's fluid dynamics. Makes sense. So, all right. One more here. This is from I. He says, what is the reason the snake handlers didn't disown you after your lives got derailed by pyramids and conspiracies?
I'll let you answer that one. I think we just answered it.
We dragged them into the conspiracies with us.
Yes.
That's exactly right. I've heard them tell the story about how they just decided to do this podcast because they talk about this stuff all the time. And I go, all right, you're doing this, so it's important to you. I'm gonna download it and listen to it. So at that point, one episode, I'm hooked. I'm up to date. I've heard every episode except 84 where I talked.
You didn't listen to your own episode, man?
But yeah, it's an amazing thing. The stuff they've uncovered, the papers, the books. I mean, the recent one on Christopher Dunn and then this last one on Belikovsky. I'm doing a lot of traveling now, and I'll tell you what, I'm with all you guys that travel that love to have the podcast, because it's a great way to spend a long trip in a vehicle going down the road. It just makes
more
traveling
enjoyable.
And people look over at you and you're laughing. You're like, what's wrong with that guy? Hey, man, it's okay. It's okay.
I heard one of your listeners talk about going through the supermarket with listening to a podcast and laughing out loud and people staring at them. And I caught myself doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Got my earbuds on. I'm going in the grocery store and I'm laughing out loud and everybody's like.
So I don't know how we didn't do anything. They just said, hey, we're doing a podcast. So
Yeah, the question is why didn't you disown us?
Oh.
Oh, no, because we're proud of you.
Yeah.
We really
Yeah.
are proud of you. We feel like
whether that's the music they're doing, they want to show us a song they're working on. We've always been interested. Over the years, I can tell you there's a handful of songs I don't ever need to hear again.
Same here.
But most of the time when they get interested in something and they want to talk to us about it, we're very interested. So no, we haven't disowned them.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, we completely stopped playing one of the bumper songs because of one guy,
Yeah.
and he's now happy.
Right.
And so am I.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Okay.
hear that song.
And he didn't
anymore.
actually specify. He said that
He said all the bumper music's great except for one song.
yeah.
And I was like, it's got to be this one. And
Said
I stopped playing.
only one of them kind of sucks.
That's right.
And you figured out immediately which one it was.
Oh, wow.
All right, let's let
tell a
the
story.
watcher come on. Go ahead, buddy.
Touching on your parents and how they've always just kind of been involved and proud of your endeavors. First time I met them, there was a show called the Bandera River Fest. This was probably 2006, maybe 2007. There was this other band who I won't name. They were great, but they fell apart. And I'm like, somebody's telling me, they're like, oh yeah, Russ and Kyle's parents are here. I'm like, where? And they're dancing right up at the front of the stage. And I'm just like, those two? And they're like, yeah, that's Russ and Kyle's parents. I was like, huh. But totally into the music.
Yeah.
Like, they were fans. They were totally blown away by it. And it's always kind of been that way, and it's awesome.
I was hoping nobody ever saw me dancing.
I still drag him on the dance floor. He's a
Yeah.
much better dancer than he thinks he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope I never get kicked out of the band, because then I'll have to dance all the time.
Yeah, we do play great shows with we play a lot of cover songs and some originals, but and the Stache joins us on stage and it's awesome. It's epic.
And I had to dance by myself or with my girlfriends.
Right. Yeah. Well, you can dance with Brett if he comes out.
And his wife.
Yeah.
I'll kill him.
Watch out, watcher. All right, guys.
got another
Last
question?
break.
Yeah, last
Okay.
break.
Snakes.
Snakes.
Snake.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final segment of the final hour of episode 140. In here with the Snake parents, talking about strange childhood experiences. So I guess we're gonna move on to somewhat of a new topic here.
We were going to talk about a trip to Venezuela in late 1981.
Yeah, but you were also going to tell the watcher.
Oh, Brett, your segment on viruses was just outstanding. As a former biology student, I thoroughly enjoyed that part, and it's just an amazing topic that could make a whole show for sure, talking about viruses as ancient aliens or whatever that we're dealing with. It was really great. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really good segment. It was on 139. That was the last show. So it was a really good.
Yeah, I've been telling everybody that when the subject comes up, a bunch of stuff that I learned from you on that episode,
Yeah,
too.
Exactly.
I hope you're right about the things you're saying.
Oh, no,
I'm
totally
spreading it like a
trusting you,
virus.
yeah.
Brought back a lot of memories of virology classes, and it was just great. But anyway, in 1981, I had an opportunity to go to Venezuela pipelining. Venezuela was booming at the time. There were just finding natural resources everywhere, and the pay scale that they offered me at that point was so great that I told Sonny, I go, man, I think you can go with me and bring Russ. Sonny was pregnant with Kyle at the time, and she goes, you sure? I said, well, look at this. This is going to be good. And there's a possibility we could be down there for an extended period of time. And I certainly don't want to be down there without you all that time. So let's check with the authorities and see if that's going to work. So we got an okay for all of us to go. And our project was automatic welding of 26-inch gas pipeline, 21 kilometers, and that was the first phase of a larger project.
Gas?
Gas pipeline,
Like
yes.
what kind of gas?
Natural gas.
Natural gas, okay.
This is natural gas. So it wasn't a really heavy walled pipe. It was not going to go to the compressor right away, so it didn't have to be very thick wall. It just had to be, minimal standards. But the process we were using was an automatic welding process. There was the right-of-way was cleared through the Venezuela jungle and the plains and all. I mean, just incredible terrain. And there was, just to throw this in, there was a different snake every day on the job. And since us Texans knew only rattlesnakes and copperheads and moccasins, every snake you needed to dispatch because you didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
They all had to be killers. But anyway, the pipeline project had a bending machine, a facing machine for the welds, an internal welding machine that rode through the inside of the pipe. And once the facing machine finished the leading edge and the trailing edge, they brought the two joints together. And this internal welding machine had 4 welding heads on it. And they were 90 degrees apart. And 2 of them would kick off and weld 90 degrees of the circle, and when it went back, the other 2 welding heads would fire up and weld the other two. So it would go clockwise one time and then counterclockwise, and the other two welding heads would finish the internal weld. And I was on the external part of that pipe with the fit up and everything involved with bringing that pipe in, and the internal welding machine lining up the pipe, and it had clamps, and it would push the pipe perfectly straight together with all the edges perfectly gapped, and no high-low, no disalignment in the pipe. And then the internal welding machine would weld a bead around the inside of the pipe. And then my job was to weld a hot pass 180 degrees from top to the top dead center to the bottom dead center of the pipe. And there was a guy on the other side of the pipe, and he welded before me. He welded his side of the hot pass. And behind us came fill machines, and the welders had machines that would oscillate and fill in the bevel as they went around, and a welder on each side doing the fill pass. And behind them were two more sets of welders, and they would do the cap that capped the pipe off, all externally with a wire feed machine, and it traveled on a band around the pipe, and you flipped your hood down and hit the start button, and the wire feed machine would just start welding, and all your job was to keep it in the groove. You had controls to keep it in the groove and controls to slow it down or speed it up, and tie it into the bottom of the weld of the other guy's side. It was just an amazing technology for 1981 to do this thing. I have numerous pictures here.
Well, let's talk about, you said a bending machine, so let's talk about that, because you got a 26-inch, is that what you said?
26-inch pipe, 40 feet long.
So when you bend a pipe, it wants to fold.
Yes, it wants to kink.
Right.
So they had what they had was a internal mandrel that went down the inside of the pipe in the bending machine, and it would keep the shape of the pipe, and the engineer would determine the bend that it need in this curve of the land. So if you were going over a hump,
Oh, yeah.
it had to have this bend to keep it at the same depth. And so he would mark the top dead center of the pipe, determine the curve of the earth, and then he would...
Wait, the earth is flat.
Yeah. Not in Venezuela. It wasn't. But the machine had a mandrel that would hold the shape, the 26-inch shape inside the pipe, while these two huge hydraulic lifts would push up and bend the...
At either end?
Yes, in a specific
okay. All right,
point
yeah.
on the pipe.
Okay.
I mean, it had to be, maybe 20 feet from the end or 15 feet from the end. He had to determine where it was, and he would mark it with a punch and a chalk mark on the pipe. That was
Yeah.
the top dead center. So if you were going over when you picked up that joint, the machine, the side boom had to pick it up where that bend was exactly right.
Yeah.
To fit in the last, and he would mark the top dead center on the last joint. Those had to line up, those two center punch marks on the top of the pipe, and then his bend was engineered to go to the curvature of the terrain
Yeah.
when they dug the ditch to bury the pipe. And away we went. It was just the machinery in 1981, which I can't imagine what it's like now, but back then it was the most amazing thing. And then once he did the bend, the facing machine would come in there. And it would
so a
jam.
facing machine.
Facing machine is a machine that sticks in the end of the pipe and cuts a bevel and then makes it perfectly clean, hard, blue twisted steel,
Yeah.
shiny as it can be.
So the very end of the pipe, which is usually just cut flat or whatever, it's got the factory
whatever
edge.
from the factory edge
Right.
is rusted or whatever.
Yeah, but the automatic welding systems need specific bevels on the insides of the pipe joints and on the outside of the pipe joints. So the facing machine goes up against the pipe and you have to do it to all the ends of the pipes, and the facing machine goes in there and cuts a very specific bevel. It'll be,
Yes.
45 degrees and then 90 degrees and then 15 or something. There's always a
land in there. So
Yeah.
this had a double bevel. It was back beveled on the inside for the internal machine
Right.
to make a weld. Then you had a flat spot that was called the land.
Okay.
And then an outside bevel that was cut again. So you had this groove on the top that looked like this, then flat, and then
right.
cut
So if
back
there-
on the inside.
So there were troughs on the inside and the outside
Yes.
for the welding to fill with material.
Right.
And that's what you were talking about. There was 3 different welding processes on
Exactly.
the outside, and then you have
Yeah.
the cap on in there.
Yeah. So we took off from one end of the jungle in Venezuela one way, and these stick rod guys went the other way. And they looked at us with all our machines and all our side booms and all our tents and all our equipment. And they were just like shaking their heads like, that'll never work.
Right.
And I can tell you, we smoked them.
Yes.
That process was so amazingly, incredibly brilliant. So I have pictures of the pipeline. I have pictures of the internal welding machine. It looks like a torpedo that rolls down the inside of the pipe. And on the end of the torpedo, that's the outside end, is a 40-foot reach rod with a control box on it with wheels on it, so that when you need to move to the next weld, you pick up the reach rod and stick it in the next joint of pipe that the side booms, and then the side boom brings it in and the control box rolls, and while the pipe joint's coming in to meet the last welded segment to make a new weld, then the reach rod comes out of the other end of the pipe.
Oh, yeah.
So this guy's got control, and he can hit you tap on the pipe with a hammer one time, doom, and the guy on the control box, which was Fletcher, hit a button, and all these shoes would come out and push out the imperfections in the roundness of the pipe. And it was perfectly round, and it was all, hydraulics or compressed air, and it would push these shoes out, on either side of the weld and push that pipe up, and we would look at it and determine whether the fit was right or not, and a couple of taps on the hammer would release the shoes, and then we could signal the side boom up or down or in or out or whatever and stop it, and then hit the shoes again, and boom, it'd clamp it perfect. And when it was perfect, we rattled the hammer on the pipe, and Fletcher would hit the button, and the internal machine would start welding.
The shoes are a series of basically pistons that are coming out of a ring,
Yes.
right?
A
And they would-
ring.
yeah. So there's a ring, and the shoes are like a solid.
Yeah. So
The ones that I worked with were solid metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would grab onto the inside of the pipe, and you'd have 12 of them or something
Yeah.
like
They
that.
had a heat-resistant, non-conductive plate on top of it. I don't know if it was Teflon or what it was, but they would come up and push on the pipe, and anything that was out of round,
Right. It would.
perfectly round.
Right.
man.
And that whole assembly is working because there's a single hydraulic arm pushing in, and there's all these, well, at least the ones we made, all these levers. So when the levers are pulled away from the shoes by the hydraulic arm, all the shoes are retracted into the ring. And then when the hydraulic arm goes forward, those levers start to push those shoes out, and they all move out exactly the same. And this very strong system, very powerful, grabs the inside of the pipe and can actually change it into a perfect
Change the
circular
shape.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And Clay Jones was our electrician back in 1981, and here I am in
Doxed him.
2000.
Just doxed him.
Well,
That doesn't matter.
William Jones. How
Yeah.
about
No, he
He's
can
a-
be doxed. He runs a
okay.
big business.
That's
Okay.
right.
Clay Johnson?
Clay Johnson.
So that was our job, and it was just really amazing. I got pictures of all these guys.
How far? How long did you guys do that run?
21 kilometers we ran.
Wow.
And we actually, Uncle Lane, Sonny's brother, was running the project, and he would scout ahead at the terrain, and he said, "Oh man, there's a big flat plain when we get out of this mud hole we're in." with all these bad snakes, and we're going to take off running.
Yeah.
And we're going to set the Venezuelan record for how many joints, 40-foot joints of 26-inch can be welded in a 10-hour day. And so we did, and everything worked perfectly, and we just ran across this part, and for 10 hours we just welded, and it was a lot of fun.
How are the pipes getting to you?
Dang if I know. They were already there when I got there.
Oh, okay.
So, because the engineer was bending them and they were facing and bending them ahead of us on the right of way.
Okay. So there was a right of way, so they were bringing them in by truck.
And we had Venezuelan help. They ran our tractors and they were our laborers. And so when the wire feed machine travels on this band around the outside of the pipe, you get down to the bottom and you tie into the other guy's weld at the dead bottom of the pipe. Then you stop your process, you turn the machine off, and then your helper would hit a release lever and pull the bug, we called them bugs, back up to the top dead center of the pipe. And the guy on the other, not top, but near the top, and the other guy would pull his machine up to the top, and then we'd crawl out from under the pipe, pop the whole bug off of it, and then the helper would clean the nozzles and all the wire feed problems that you have. We trained them specifically to take care of the splatter and all this stuff. And the tractors would move ahead 40 feet. We'd pick up another joint, stick the reach rod in there. The internal welding machine, he'd hit a travel button. Boom, it'd come running down the pipe. It had a little whisker on the bottom of it that was riding on the bottom of the pipe. And I think Clay Johnson developed this. But when the whisker fell out of the end of the pipe, the internal machine stopped traveling.
Nice.
So it would just shoot out like a torpedo.
Yeah.
So, we had to pull it out from time to time to reload the wire feed spools on there. There were, we had 4 spools of wire on the internal machine, so it would run out. We'd have to stop and reload it and clean all the heads up and go again. But it was an amazing experience. And then when we got off work at night, Sonny and Russ we lived in a house and with 6 other welders, or I was one of 6 welders in that house. And Sonny and Russ would walk to the local grocery store and get us groceries every day for dinner that night. And Sonny hired some help to help her clean the house and cook while we were out. I mean, we came home incredibly dirty.
Yeah.
So we had to have a washing machine. There wasn't water pressure all the time, and it was filling a cistern up high, so the showers were gravity fed. And
no water heaters. The heat
no
from
water heaters.
The day the sun from the daytime heated the water for your showers.
So you wanted to be the first guy in the shower because the water was still hot. The last guy froze.
I took my showers during the day while they were at work.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was very interesting. It was like I had my own business there running that household.
Because you had 5 other dudes in there too. Yeah.
There were 6 men and you and Russ and me, to feed, and the laundry and it's just unbelievable. So with very limited, water. The water turned off certain times during the day. There was no water, so you only had what was in your cistern, and so it was just you just had to learn all the way it worked. I mean, we loved being down there, but so Russ and I, we were about 2 blocks from this great little store, and we would just go down there every day. And we would pick out what meat we were going to cook for dinner, and because the refrigerator was like the size of a postage stamp for all those people, and they had to have some beer in it. So there was so we had milk and beer in the refrigerator, and whatever vegetables that we got on the weekend, and the meats and all that stuff we had to get daily.
So Dad has a bunch of pictures. They're old school actual photographs. So I'll get some of them scanned in. So anyone listening can probably check the show notes. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, the picture should be included. But yeah, I just wanted to say he's holding them right now, and I'm like, how am I going to get these in? How are we going to show these to the watcher?
They're actual pictures.
They're actually photographs. Yeah,
Real photographs. Yeah.
Actually, one day we scheduled to go out there and work without the Venezuelan laborers, and Sonny and Linda, Lane's wife, and Meg, and all the wives that came down there were our tractor drivers. We showed them how to drive the side booms, and they were our helpers. And there's Mom pregnant with Kyle helping me pull my machine out from under the bottom of the pipe. And I have pictures of that.
Wow.
And Clay Johnson, there were, the Venezuelans had a lot of free-range animals out there, and Clay Johnson was a world-class calf roper from Texas. So,
of course,
he rustled some guy's calf and roped it and tied it up like he was in the rodeo and threw his hands up. I have pictures of very incriminating pictures of Clay right there.
Holy crap, that's Clay.
And about 5 minutes after he had that calf roped, we heard this roar coming out of the brush, and it was Mama. And she was not happy. And we had to jump in the truck and run like heck after Clay untied that calf to get away from that mad cow. Here's a picture of yourself and your cousin on the pipeline playing out there on the right-of-way.
Wow, was it blonde?
You were almost blonde in the sun.
When you speak Spanish, you're blonde.
And it wouldn't be the same if I didn't bring a picture of a snake.
Yeah.
So the one snake we did catch that we recognized was a boa constrictor. And he was just chilling out on a big log in the jungle. And I said, oh my gosh, that's a boa constrictor, and ran over there and grabbed it. And of course, everybody wanted to hold it. So here you go, Snake Bros. There's Uncle Lane.
Oh my God, look at that thing. Wow.
Yeah, bro. I need one of those hats.
Yeah.
Yep, that was AWS Automatic Welding Service.
So a lot of this process, the automatic welding and everything, was developed by a lot of the people, like Uncle Lane, Clay.
Yep.
These guys played big roles in developing that technology.
Exactly right. And Granddaddy Ernest.
Right, and which is how, because the way y'all got the job to begin with was through the development of this process, right?
Exactly
and it was sort
right.
of a test run.
Yes, it was a test run. And they were not convinced it would work. And there had been numerous failures in the past. But by 1981, the offshore business had gone all automatic welding because they could control the environment on a barge.
Yep.
Everything was the same every day unless the seas were outrageous, and they could control everything as they put the pipe in, brought the pipe on the barge, and let it go off the back end down in deep water. And this automatic welding process with the facing machines and the internal welder, it was just so superior to anything that anybody came up with. Yeah. So it was it's strictly, as far as I know, Brown and Root, Halliburton, anybody that's in that business anymore, they don't do anything but automatic welding now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of our family on my mom's side, the whole Texas bunch, were all heavily into this industry. Going way back to its
inception.
Inception.
From its inception. Clay was definitely involved in its development. He was in R&D when he first got there, and then when they were having problems on jobs, they sent him overseas to try to figure out what the problems were, and he just was amazing at it. And
so he and Granddaddy worked side by side for like 6-7 years.
In Italy.
All over the
and-
world.
Yeah.
A lot of places.
Yeah.
Couple
So
of
when-
cowboys.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, and here's Clay. He's a calf roper. Granddaddy's a bull rider. Lane's a bull rider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I meet Clay in Venezuela, and we've reconnected, and we're just having a great time now.
Right, and this is how I got involved in part of this, because Lane later on, much later, developed a new revolutionary type of facing machine that was better and faster than anything anybody had made before that.
And more versatile.
More versatile and
Quick change.
modular.
Yeah.
Yes, you could relatively speaking, quickly disconnect large parts of it and plug in other parts that were smaller or larger, depending on
Yeah.
what kind of pipe you were doing. And I
Yeah.
got involved in the development of that, and
Yeah,
that was
worked for quite a while.
which is why I know about the shoes and the hydraulic.
Yeah.
I know that part of the job because I
Yeah.
did a lot of work and I built many, many of those machines.
Yeah.
So,
So, I mean, Lane built a machine that would go from like 20-inch to 36-inch pipe
Yeah.
yeah.
with a few changes. Within within an hour and a half, you could change the facing machine's pipe size from
Yeah.
something relatively small to something huge
Right. Because
with the same machine.
each machine was, the front part, which was the thing that went inside the pipe, with the shoes that came out. We had a tiny one for the little bitty pipes, and then you had a mid-sized one that would get
Yeah.
everything up to a certain point, and then there was an enormous one that would grab the big, really big pipes. And so you just had to pick which one of those three you needed to use.
Yep.
And it was fairly simple to unhook it from the front of the machine and take that one off, and then put the next one on. Of course, you had to have it was heavy.
Had to have some kind of lift.
We'd have it overhead, yeah. So we'd unhook that one with its chain, get it out of the way,
Yeah.
and then pick up the other one and you click it on. And in the face of the machine itself, the big rotating disc we had multiple ones of those too, but we usually you would just grab a different head,
Yeah.
right? But there was an enormous one, and then all the cutting tools could move in and out.
Yes,
And
that
each
was
cutting
the
tool-
innovative thing.
Each
really.
cutting tool was mounted on this big black block that had all kinds of grooves and screw holes in it, and you could do all these minute adjustments. You move that block into the right place, and then do all these tiny adjustments to the carbon cutting edge or whatever, and you had like little tiny set screws you'd turn and get that angle just right, run that facing machine into the pipe, and if it made a whole lot of noise, pull it back out, tweak a few things, run it back in, pull it back out until you got it to where it would hit that pipe silent.
Yeah.
And it didn't chatter, it didn't squeal, it would just hit that pipe and and just huge amounts of metal would come
Blue
slinking off.
twisted
giant
steel.
slinking
Blue
slinkies.
twisted steel.
Yeah. Razor blade slinkies.
Right.
Fascinating
And once you got it tuned like that, and we had to learn how to tune it so that, and it was weird because it was tuning in the sense that you don't want the pipe to ring either, because that causes a chatter if the pipe starts vibrating, right? And then the tool will start bouncing on it more and more, and you get a
this
destructive
little wave pattern.
Yeah. And for the automatic welding, they want a perfect, they'll look at that bevel.
Yeah.
And if it isn't just right,
All the way around.
so you would tune the cutting tools to be slightly out of sync with each other,
Yeah.
so that when it went in, it didn't ring it, and it was just
Yeah.
And we got that machine to where it could face enormous, really thick pipes in seconds.
Thick wall.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so a lot of fun doing that stuff.
And then, of course, when they sent those machines out on a job, they'd send a technician with it, and that
Right, because you had to know how to operate it and how to adjust and tune and everything, and, it blew people away, And this wasn't that long ago. Like we would go do a demonstration. We'd get a machine and mount it up on a trailer with a whole rig. And Lane's like, "Come on, man, we're gonna go show these guys how awesome this thing is." And we'd all get in the
just like straight up bull rider. Hey man, let's go.
And we'd all pile in, and we're all drive out there, and one of us, either me or Lane, my cousin Lane Davis, would jump up on and he'd be like, "All right, yeah." And Lane, the uncle is down there talking to the bigwigs, and these guys know they've been, and they've got their engineers or whatever, and he'd be like, "All right, man, fire that thing up." We'd get up there. And when they saw that facing machine, they were like, okay, it's cool, it's modular. But when it grabbed on and that thing would, and in like 5 seconds, you pull it off and the pipe is done. They're like, oh my God. Because the facing machines they had at the time were slow, loud.
Yeah.
And
imperfect.
Yeah.
Had a lot of problems.
And I saw that. I went to see, Blaine was like, you need to go see one of these other machines. And I went to see one of them operated, and it was horrendously loud. You had to have all kinds of ear protection, and and they would, it would cut the bevel, but it took a long time. The flywheel actually went slowly, and it was just like, in our machine, we got that thing spinning quickly, and it went in there, and it was more like a lathe.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was,
Yeah.
a lathe. Yeah.
So I was real proud of doing that. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was our experience in Venezuela. Sunny and I just can't tell you what the conditions were like there. They were
Giant rats.
There were a lot. There were 4 major oil companies. This is how booming this place was in our one area. And we found out later that they were nationwide, and the country was so rich in resource that there were people all over the world working there. There were us, there were Australians, New Zealanders, French, British. Most of the developed world was in Venezuela at that time, trying to develop these people's natural resources. And there was a lot of positive things happening about it. The resorts were packed. The cities were thriving. Yes, there were still plenty poor folks we saw while we were there, but there was actually looked like a middle class. We lived in a middle class neighborhood. We had three houses or something like that, I think, for all of us, for the group. We were spaced out a little bit, but man, the people were friendly. We were 5 degrees from the equator, and the best beer was Polar, a beer that had a white bear on the can.
Polar beer.
Speaking of beer,
Everybody-
I'm about ready for one.
Let's get some Polars, man.
One other question. I know there was a lot of work. You were doing 10-hour days, but did you guys ever did you see any ruins while you were down there?
We tried to go to Angel Falls, which you can't drive to. But I said, man, Angel Falls is in Venezuela. It's the highest falls in the world. Let's drive there.
Oh, wow, yeah.
No,
So-
we couldn't drive there.
We didn't make it. So then we tried to get to a place called Mundo Nuevo. And I have pictures of us asking questions of the locals. But we drove into the mountains with the company trucks. And we were following a map, the old-timey thing you lay out on the hood of the truck. And you got the native there, and you're pointing at the map, and he's pointing over this way.
Yeah.
And like, no, you're nowhere near that. But yes, we did try to go see stuff, but
We didn't know to look for ruins, so we did not look at any
You
ruins.
didn't just happen. There were. Okay.
no.
Oh well.
We didn't have the Snake Bros mindset at that time.
I did fish for piranha.
You fished for piranha?
Yeah, I took some of the bologna from lunch and put it on a hook and threw it in this puddle we were crossing in the middle of the jungle in case there was piranha in there. See if they like bologna.
Oh man, that's awesome. Piranha fishing in the jungles of Venezuela.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Probably you were passing by pyramids and you didn't even know it.
Yep.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Who knows how close we came to things, but it would have been really awesome to see.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been a blast.
Yep.
Thank you so much. A lot of listeners requesting a return to the stash, and of course to get Mom on. So thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thoroughly
Thank you
enjoyed
for inviting us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to listen to this episode?
I don't know.
I got one thing to say. Snake!
They tried to time that. I watched.
Didn't work.
I didn't know what he was going to say. I thought that was what he was going to say, but
All
I
right.
wasn't sure.
As you guys know, you can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Go to the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Check out the encyclopedia and the glossary of terms there, and also the snake skins, which is our merchandise store. Join the pyramid scheme. on Patreon or by giving us a single one-time donation on PayPal. You can find that on the website as well. Thanks to everyone who has done that. You are always helping the show.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Give us reviews wherever you can, but especially in the iTunes store. If you go to iTunes and give the Brothers of the Serpent podcast reviews, I almost always read the reviews on the show, and we really appreciate everybody who has been stepping up to do that. The reviews have been rolling in, so thank you so much. That really helps to share the show. Also, share the shows wherever you can. Follow us on Twitter at Snake Bros with no vowels. Join the Facebook group, which is run by Jordan. Join the Discord chat, which is our Snake Pit troll room. So we sometimes stream live shows there, and you get to hear the inside baseball of the all the in-break banter.
That's right.
So that's always fun. And the Discord is run by Jeff, and he also runs the Library of the Serpent. So thanks very much to him. And there is a link to the library on the website. Also, History Shift. He is in the Discord, and he makes all of our YouTube videos, and he's on YouTube and on Twitter, so follow him there. Also, Pod Doodles, who takes our podcasts and turns them into videos of him doodling, which you can watch while listening to the podcast. It's really cool. So follow him on Twitter and on YouTube. Don't forget about Cosmographia, which is a podcast we do with Randall Carlson, and we have a Reddit subreddit. So find us r/Brothers of the Serpent and give us updates on Reddit. Help us out. Thanks to Where Did the Road Go, Uncharted X, Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape, the C Word Podcast, Grimerica, and Conspiranormal, and all of you listeners out there. We thank you guys so much. This is our favorite time of the week.
That's right.
That's right. We love you, and we always have.
Always will.
That's right. Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.
Get back to work. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Hi, Mom.